You do not encounter anyone by accident. Every feeling you hold, every unresolved fragment of your inner world, every invisible wound you carry, these are not passive forces. They emit a vibration, and that vibration, whether conscious or not, calls forth the exact people who reflect it. This is not coincidence. It is the law of resonance in motion. You do not merely attract who you want, you attract who corresponds to your current state of being. Even the most painful or disruptive relationships arrive bearing messages that the ego resists, but the soul longs to hear. Carl Jung believed that the most meaningful human encounters are not orchestrated by logic or chance, but by the self, long before the bodies ever meet. So ask yourself, what are your relationships revealing to you about your own depths? In this video, you'll begin to see why certain bonds form, why some stories repeat, and why those seemingly random meetings are often symbolic reflections of your inner life. Watch until the end. Because once you understand how resonance shapes your relationships, you'll stop calling it coincidence. You'll begin to read it as the language of the unconscious itself. Perhaps you've already lived it. You're moving through life when suddenly, without warning, someone arrives. A glance in a cafe, a fleeting conversation on the subway, a message sent by accident, and everything quietly, irrevocably changes. It seems random, but it isn't. These moments that alter the trajectory of your existence do not follow logic, nor do they obey planning. They follow a thread, an invisible thread of psychic intention that connects two inner worlds, before either person has the words to explain it. As Jung once wrote, some connections happen before life even gives them a name. That isn't just poetic, it's psychological truth. Beneath every encounter lies a symbolic intelligence, a movement of the psyche guiding us toward what must be lived, healed, learned, or released. What we often label as fate may in fact be the unconscious weaving itself into external form. There is a resonance between your inner landscape and the people you meet. You won't see it with your eyes, but you will feel it. It shows up in the repetition of stories, in the mirrored wounds others awaken, in the strangers who leave marks deeper than time could explain. When someone enters your life and everything is stirred, peace or chaos, clarity or confusion, they haven't arrived by accident. They may be the mirror, the key, the storm, or the bridge, but they are never irrelevant. These encounters are called in by the self, the deepest essence of your being. It knows what the ego cannot see. It moves through symbols, through synchronicities, through dreams, and it often uses another person to reveal what you would never discover alone. Look back. You'll find that the most significant people in your life always showed up precisely when you needed them, though not always when you wanted them. They weren't always easy, but they were always timely, because the soul recognizes what the mind hasn't yet named. And when that recognition happens, life's trajectory shifts. The external begins to align with what is vibrating within. That is the essence of the law of psychic resonance. This is not about energy in some abstract or mystical sense. It is about symbolic and emotional frequency. You attract not what you fantasize about, but what matches your inner field, your wounds, your longings, your forgotten parts. The other appears as a mirror, often reflecting precisely the pieces you have not yet claimed. That's why some people touch you so deeply, while others pass by unnoticed. Some make you feel understood. Others make you feel pierced. They are reflecting you, whether you realize it or not. This resonance expresses itself not in rational steps, but in patterns, symbols, and psychic repetition. The unconscious does not use direct speech. It speaks in mirrored faces, recurring events, uncanny names, sudden déjà vu. And each time, it is quietly whispering, "There is something here you have yet to see." No one psychic field is neutral. We all emit invisible signals. These signals attract not only those who resemble us, but those who awaken what is dormant in us. That is why you don't always attract what you want. You attract what you're still unresolved with. Not as punishment, but as coherent. And this is also why some bonds feel inevitable. Even when you try to walk away, something pulls you back. Even when it makes no sense logically, your emotional body recognizes a deeper pattern. Because the encounter is happening at a level the mind cannot reach. And it is in that deeper realm that real transformation begins. Nothing that approaches your soul is ever random. Beneath every meaningful encounter that leaves a mark, no matter how disorienting or painful, there exists a hidden order, a precise alignment of inner and outer worlds. What we meet externally is never separate from what moves within us. The universe does not operate as a detached backdrop, but rather as an intimate mirror of our deepest psychic structures. Some people arrive to complete us. Others confront us like living archetypes of the very things we've disowned. And in almost every significant bond, there is a rupture, a moment when someone touches the exact part of ourselves we've worked so hard to conceal. It's not a chance. It's psychic complementarity, the magnetic pull between what is conscious and what still sleeps in shadow. Jung observed that the ego, by nature, is partial. It builds its identity by excluding what it cannot understand or control, traits it deems unacceptable, emotions it buries in shame, desires it dares not name. Yet what is repressed doesn't vanish, it becomes magnetic. The unconscious, always seeking wholeness, draws us toward the very qualities the ego has rejected. The rational is pulled toward the irrational. The orderly is drawn to chaos. The grounded one encounters the dreamer. This isn't chaos. It's the symbolic language of the soul calling attention to what has been lost within. These opposite encounters aren't errors. They are invitations, thresholds to transformation. They challenge our patterns, provoke our beliefs, dismantle our emotional logic. At first, they seem foreign, even threatening. But over time, they unveil the fragments of our psyche we have yet to integrate. They don't arrive to hurt us, they arrive to awaken us. Jung called this process individuation, the journey towards psychological wholeness. To individuate is to meet what you've abandoned, to hold what you've denied, and to see in the other a mirror of your own becoming. When someone enters your life and they seem to shake your very structure, ask, what are they showing me about myself? What dream have I silenced? What trait have I only ever admired from afar? The opposite does not come to destroy. It arrives as a reminder of who you might still become. And sometimes what we call love is the soul whispering, there it is, that part of you you've forgotten. Yet not all connections that move us are true. Some are projections, reflections of an inner absence clothed in the image of another. This is the great tension of self-awareness, discerning between soul recognition and psychological projection. That pull you feel, it may be intuition, or it may be your unconscious projecting an old longing, an unmet emotional need, a forgotten ideal. Projection is potent. It arrives like a spell, sudden, overwhelming, seductive. You feel seen, known, understood, but not by the other as they are, instead by the part of yourself that has finally been stirred. Intuition, on the other hand, is quiet. It doesn't demand. It doesn't intoxicate. It simply recognizes there is no urgency, only clarity. The true connection flows without the pressure of fantasy. And so the question must be asked, what am I truly seeing in this person? If your answer comes wrapped in salvation, idealization, or a desire to be completed, it is likely projection. If it comes with presence, groundedness, and openness, it may be real. Awareness is the threshold. It is the light that reveals whether you are meeting the other or just meeting yourself through them. And many relationships begin with projection, only later revealing their true face. When the illusion dissolves, what remains can be pain, but also awakening, because projection is human. The problem is not that we project, it's that we forget we're doing it. Not every relationship is meant to last, but every relationship can reveal. Some come to show you where you still ache for rescue. Others, to remind you that you are already whole. And the depth of your discernment will determine which path you walk. Because not everything that burns brightly is a soulmate. Sometimes, it's the echo of an old desire asking to be witnessed, to be finally released. Some people enter your field and instantly trigger discomfort, irritation, jealousy, anger. Your impulse might be to dismiss, to judge, to flee. But Jung would ask you to pause, because the intensity of your reaction reveals where the shadow has been touched. And the shadow is not evil, it is simply everything you refuse to see in yourself. The arrogant one stirs your denied vanity. The chaotic one evokes your buried instability. The selfish one calls forth your abandoned need for boundaries. You reject in others what still remains unaccepted in you. This doesn't excuse behavior, but it does demand inner honesty. Before you react, ask, why does this affect me so deeply? What is this really touching? The answer is rarely on the surface. And often, it is not about them at all, it is about you. Because the other is always a mirror. Sometimes of your light, sometimes of your wounds, but always of something waiting to be known. The answer rarely lies on the surface. What you reject in yourself often returns through another, as criticism, rivalry, and the instinct to retreat or judge is usually not about them, but the unease of encountering your own shadow in their reflection. It is far easier to point outward than to meet the unfamiliar face of your own psyche. Jung once said, "What you deny in yourself appears in others as fate." At first glance, it may sound unforgiving, but in truth, it offers liberation, because it reveals a path to transformation. You're not doomed to endlessly relive the same judgments, discomforts, or emotional clashes. If you are willing to observe what the other awakens in you, not with blame, but with awareness, that inattention can become the raw material of insight. The most uncomfortable connections are often the most illuminating, not because they are warm or gentle, but because they expose what has been buried beneath your persona. And only what is brought to light can be healed, integrated, reclaimed. You don't need to love everyone, but if someone stirs something deep, it's worth asking why. The conflict may not be about the other at all. It may be the cry of a forgotten part of you, yearning to be seen through the very discomfort it provokes. You may believe you're making conscious choices in love, in friendships, in attraction, that you've evolved, that you're wiser now. Yet time and again you find yourself at the same threshold, entangled with the same kind of person, reliving the same pain, haunted by the same emotional void. This isn't misfortune. It's psychic patterning. And more often than not, it's the unconscious orchestrating the repetition. It replays what remains unresolved, not out of punishment, but as a sacred insistence that the wound be seen, felt, and transmuted. It brings you back to the place of origin, childhood impressions, first heartbreaks, unprocessed attachments, not to trap you, but to offer another chance. You can try to rationalize it, defend it, even promise yourself that this time it's different. But as long as the core wound is alive, it continues to shape your perception. You may mistake emotional urgency for love, longing for healing, intensity for connection. That's how you find yourself drawn to what hurts, craving validation that never arrives, feeling unseen even when someone is right beside you, not because you desire pain, but because the soul is seeking resolution through symbolic repetition. Repetition is the psyche's ritual. It reopens the scene, whispering, "Perhaps now you're ready." But healing never comes from fixing the other. It begins when you turn inward, with presence and tenderness, toward the parts of yourself still asking to be held. None of this is your fault. It's structure, not destiny. And once you begin to see it, you can shift it. The first step is radical honesty. Why do I reach for the unavailable? Why do I settle for scraps when I deserve fullness? Why do I confuse chaos with passion? Awareness is the alchemist here. It doesn't erase the past, but it breaks the trance. It creates space for new choices, ones that honor your evolution rather than your old wounds. You're not chained to your patterns, but you must recognize that for a long time, they've been deciding for you. And the moment that becomes conscious, a new narrative begins, one where love no longer reenacts pain, but reflects your wholeness. A book that beautifully echoes this truth is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. If you've ever wondered why you attract certain people or why your emotional patterns seem to repeat like fate, this book holds answers. Murphy describes the subconscious not as a passive layer, but as the fertile soil of your reality. Whatever you plant there, through belief, emotion, repetition, grows into your life experience. You may say you want love, but if your inner beliefs hum with rejection, scarcity, or unworthiness, that's what will resonate outward. That's what you'll draw in. And that brings us full circle to the law of resonance. Your internal vibration calls in people, events, and cycles that match its frequency, whether or not you're aware. The beauty is, this vibration can be changed. Murphy explains how, when you begin to reshape your beliefs, feeding your subconscious with new images, empowered thoughts, compassionate truths, your field begins to shift. And with that shift, so does what arrives. This was the moment I realized most relationships aren't choices of logic, but echoes of the unconscious. They are mirrors, sacred symbols, of everything still aching to be healed, remembered, or reclaimed. So if you feel stuck in the same cycle, always meeting the same kind of soul in a different body, read this book. It's not a quick fix. It's a deep, accessible invitation to reprogram your inner world so that the outer world no longer repeats what once hurt you. When the inner field is transformed, resonance changes, and from that change, life begins anew. The answer, more often than not, does not lie on the surface. It emerges from the depths, from the places we are most reluctant to look. The shadow you attract rarely wears a label. It may arrive as criticism, rivalry, envy, or discomfort, disguised as dislike. And the instinct to withdraw, to judge, to push away, is often a defense mechanism, a refusal to face the mirrored reflection of your own unacknowledged self. Jung once said, "What you deny in yourself appears in others as fate." Though these words may sound unforgiving, they carry liberation, because they reveal a path inward, a way through. You do not have to continue looping through the same judgments, the same ruptures, the same emotional echoes. You can choose to turn the friction others awaken in you into fuel for self-awareness. The most uncomfortable relationships are often the most alchemical, not because they offer comfort or joy, but because they excavate buried fragments of your psyche and call them to the surface. And only what rises to the light can be healed, integrated, and made whole. You don't need to like everyone, but you do need to understand why certain people disturb your equilibrium so deeply. Not every conflict is about the other. Often it is your own unseen longing trying to speak, through projections, through sharp reactions, through the aching need to be seen without disguise. You tell yourself you've changed, that you've learned, grown, evolved. But if your unconscious is still operating from unhealed wounds, you will find yourself in the same emotional room, facing the same person in a different face, repeating the same dance under a different name. This is not misfortune. It is psychic repetition. It is the unconscious summoning situations that resemble your earliest imprints, not to punish you, but to complete what was never emotionally resolved. Especially the wounds carved in childhood, from your first rejections, your unmet emotional needs, your earliest heartbreaks. The mind rationalizes, insists this time it will be different. But if the original wound is still active, it will distort your perception, your attraction, your discernment. It will make you believe you've fallen in love, when in truth you are seeking symbolic redemption, chasing a reflection of the one who didn't choose you, trying to earn the love that was once withheld. That is how we become ensnared in cycles, falling for those who aren't emotionally available, staying in relationships that harm us, feeling unseen even when we're not alone. Not out of desire for suffering, but because the unconscious seeks wholeness through repetition. It recreates the scene not to trap you, but to offer another chance at resolution. Whispering, maybe this time you'll understand. Yet true healing does not come from rewriting the outer script. It comes from returning inward, from attending to what has long remained unspoken within. This is not a flaw, it's the architecture of the psyche. And when you understand it, you begin to change it. The key is radical honesty. Ask yourself, why do I keep loving those who don't show up? Why do I accept so little when I deserve more? Why do I confuse chaos with passion, abandonment with love? Awareness doesn't fix things overnight, but it interrupts the trance. It creates a space between the pattern and the self, a space where choice becomes possible. You're not bound to your past. But to move forward, you must recognize that for a long time, your pain has been steering the wheel. And when that becomes clear, you begin to write a new chapter. One authored not by old wounds, but by the truth of who you are now. This brings me to a book that perfectly complements what we're exploring, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, by Joseph Murphy. In it, Murphy reveals something fundamental, that it is not your conscious desire but your subconscious beliefs that shape your reality. You may long for love, abundance, or respect, but if deep within you harbor beliefs of unworthiness, abandonment, or scarcity, those are the frequencies you emit, and thus, what you attract. He compares the subconscious to fertile ground. Whatever you plant in it, through emotion, repetition, and belief, will take root and grow into the life you live. And this ties seamlessly to the law of resonance. That inner frequency, born of unhealed memories and internal narratives, is the signal that magnetizes external experience. Encounters, patterns, relationships, they don't appear randomly. They arise in response to what is vibrating inside you, even if you're not yet conscious of it. What is most illuminating about Murphy's work is the idea of reprogramming. That if you begin to change the beliefs you feed your subconscious through visualization, repetition, and emotional awareness, your energetic field shifts, and with it, your outer world. That insight made me realize that most relationships aren't logical. They're mirrors. Embodied reflections of what is still aching to be felt, seen, and reintegrated. So if you find yourself stuck in emotional reruns, falling for the same type of person, enduring the same heartbreak, circling the same unfulfilled longing, the power of your subconscious mind may open a vital doorway. It's not a superficial solution. It's a profound, practical path to understanding how your inner world silently sculpts your external life. And if you're ready to take responsibility for the patterns you live, this book will meet you at the threshold of transformation. The pain of a breakup does not mean the love was in vain. On the contrary, it may be the very sign that the love fulfilled its sacred purpose. Perhaps it arrived not to stay, but to awaken, to surface what was long buried beneath the facade of control, the fragile, the dependent, the idealized parts of you that still clung to illusions. It came to break what was false, so that something more authentic could be born. While the mind mourns the absence of a happy ending, the soul knows the true ending lies elsewhere, in the clarity that lingers, in the strength that emerged from the ashes, in the awareness that expands quietly within. Some losses are not endings, but disguised beginnings. Jung saw these ruptures not as failures, but as essential phases in the process of individuation, the sacred unfolding of the self. Love, when it collapses, reveals what was misaligned and, in doing so, clears the soil for something more rooted, more conscious, more whole. Some people love you so deeply that, even without knowing, they accept the role of destroyer and midwife, to pull you out of comfort, to push you off the path that was no longer yours, to crack you open for a rebirth you could not have chosen on your own. And as agonizing as it is, this too is love, a fierce, evolutionary kind. These are not mistakes in your story. They are soul alignments, precisely timed by something wiser than the ego. With maturity, you begin to see that it had to break, because only through the breaking could something truer be reconstructed. Some people are not meant to stay. They come like seasons, brief, burning, exact. They pass through, open a door, stir a sleeping part of you, and leave. What remains feels like silence, but over time it reveals itself as wisdom. The soul understands when something has fulfilled its function. The ego clings. The soul releases. And letting go is not forgetting. It is honoring what was lived without demanding it to continue. From that place, forgiveness is born, not as a pardon, but as liberation. Forgiveness cuts the invisible thread that keeps you tied to what no longer exists. It does not erase the past, it simply stops handing it your present. To forgive is not to excuse, nor to condone. It is to stop poisoning yourself with what cannot be undone. It is to accept that the other acted from their level of consciousness, and so did you. True forgiveness is not about them. It is about the peace you choose to create within yourself. Gratitude does not romanticize. It looks with depth. It is the gaze that acknowledges, yes, it hurt, but something in me woke up, matured, deepened. Some taught you through presence, others through absence. All of them, in their own way, contributed to your becoming. Life unfolds in cycles, and every relationship is a chapter, a lesson, a mirror. Some show you what love is, others what it is not. Some mend, others fracture, but all shapes. And when you can feel gratitude even for the ones who hurt you, you begin to transmute pain into meaning. The anger dissolves, the attachment weakens, the heart creates space for the new. Not everything must last to matter. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is to say, thank you for passing through, even if you couldn't stay, and move forward, with more clarity, more lightness, more wholeness. The soul knows what arrived at the right time, and what left did so when the lesson was complete. In the end, very little was accidental. The ones who entered, the ones who stayed, the ones who walked away, all of them resonated with something vibrating inside you. Some arrived like comfort, others like chaos. Some lifted you, others shattered you. But each one touched a layer of you that needed to feel. You did not attract them by mistake. Even the ones that hurt came with a coded message, an invitation from the unconscious to evolve. And that is why, so often, it's only after the collapse that insight arises. The pain becomes a signal, the chaos a map, the other a mirror. Every soul who crosses your path arrives with a function: to awaken, to reveal, to provoke, to rupture, to heal. Sometimes, all at once. And the moment you begin to see that, something within you ripens. Because when people stop being seen as punishment or reward, and instead as parts of your own internal unfolding, the story changes. It sheds the noise of drama and steps quietly into the realm of awareness. The journey was never about controlling who enters or who leaves your life. It was always about seeing with awakened eyes what each soul came to awaken within you. Every presence held a message, a mirror, a key, something your consciousness was ready to encounter. The task was never to cling, nor to push away, but to integrate what was stirred, to release what had served its purpose, and to make space for what is still forming within the sacred architecture of your becoming. Because life isn't about avoiding pain, it's about alchemizing it into meaning. Along this path, you encountered fragments of yourself reflected in the eyes of others. You glimpsed your essence in the spark of a beginning, in the sorrow of an ending, in the fever of projection, and in the stillness of authentic presence. You came to understand that not every connection is meant to last, but every connection is meant to teach. And even those that felt like endings were, in truth, initiations, passageways to a deeper, more complete version of you. The unconscious always senses what the mind cannot yet articulate. The soul always recognizes before the name is spoken. And what appeared as coincidence was often sacred synchronicity, reunions with forgotten parts of yourself, patiently waiting to be remembered, felt, and reclaimed. No, you did not meet anyone by accident. Each encounter was a symbolic bridge between who you were and who you are still capable of becoming. Every story left a trace, not a scar, but a map. And perhaps now, looking back over the landscape of your experiences, you can say with a quiet, reverent certainty, it was all worth it. Not because everything worked out the way you once hoped, but because, in the depths of each encounter, something real was revealed. Something that brought you home to yourself. In the end, every meeting, no matter how brief or turbulent, was exactly what it needed to be, a threshold into deeper self-awareness. If these reflections stirred something within you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here we explore the soul, the unconscious, connection, and healing. Always through depth, never through superficial formulas. And if you've stayed with me until the end, I'd love for you to leave a comment below that simply says, "Nothing was by chance." That way, I'll know this message resonated in your inner world and that something within you remembered. I'll see you next. If this message stirred something inside you, don't stop here. The next video will take you even deeper into the journey of healing, growth, and self-discovery. It might just be the breakthrough your soul has been waiting for. Tap into it now. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join a community committed to truth, transformation, and real inner change. You're not alone on this path. I'll meet you in the next video, where we continue becoming who we were always meant to be.